The sun was beginning its slow descent over Sacramento, casting long shadows across the city streets. The golden hues mixed with amber streaks painted an almost surreal picture against the backdrop of towering buildings and bustling traffic. David Grant guided his sedan through the maze of roads, the hum of the engine a soothing contrast to the day's relentless demands. His fingers adjusted the air conditioning, seeking relief from the lingering heat and stress of the office. The faint strains of classical music drifted from the radio, providing a calming counterpoint to the cacophony outside. David approached a yellow light, easing off the gas pedal as it turned red. It was then that the blue and red lights flashed behind him, accompanied by the sharp blare of a police siren. Officer Mark Evans stepped out, exuding an aura of authority and control. With a buzz cut and gleaming badge, he approached David's car with measured steps, his eyes scanning every detail. "License and registration," Evans demanded curtly, leaning into the window. David complied without hesitation, his movements deliberate yet calm. He could feel Evans' gaze piercing through him, searching for any sign of weakness or wrongdoing. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Evans asked, his voice flat but tinged with authority. "I'm not entirely sure," David replied evenly, meeting the officer's gaze with unwavering composure. "You didn't come to a full stop at the light," Evans stated, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. David nodded slightly, understanding the implications, but Evans wasn't merely conducting a routine traffic stop. There was something deeper, something unspoken, simmering beneath the surface. Evans' questions began to take on a sharper edge, suggesting that this encounter was evolving beyond a simple violation. "Do you always pull over people who don't fit your idea of a typical driver?" David asked, his tone steady yet probing. Evans' eyes narrowed, his posture shifting subtly. "Step out of the car," he ordered, his voice carrying a veiled threat. David complied, his mind racing with possibilities. As he stood beside his vehicle, Evans' scrutiny intensified. Each movement, each gesture seemed designed to assert dominance and provoke a reaction. But David remained composed, his control unbroken. "You're clean," Evans muttered begrudgingly, stepping back. David turned to face him, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. "Now, officer, if you're done—" "I'm not done," Evans interrupted, his voice rising. "You seem to know a lot about what I can and can't do." David folded his arms, his posture relaxed despite the tension. "I've had my fair share of interactions with law enforcement. Let's just say I've learned a lot over the years." Evans' irritation grew, his need to maintain control becoming more apparent. "Care to explain why?" David met his gaze evenly, his words carrying the weight of truth. "Because I didn't fit your idea of someone deserving respect, and that's a problem for everyone you encounter." Evans bristled, realizing the gravity of his actions. David reached into his pocket, his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm reaching for my badge," he said calmly. "No need for theatrics. I want you to see it." Evans' eyes widened as David revealed his badge. David Grant, Head of Internal Affairs, Sacramento Division. The revelation struck Evans like a bolt of lightning, shattering his confidence. "Internal Affairs?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "Yes," David interrupted. "My job is to ensure that officers uphold the integrity and values their badges represent." Evans' face paled, his confident demeanor unraveling. David took a step forward, closing the gap Evans had instinctively created. "The most troubling part of this interaction isn't the profiling or the baseless escalation. It's the fact that you assumed I wouldn't understand the laws you're sworn to uphold." Evans opened his mouth, but no words came. David's gaze bore into him, unrelenting. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return my documents and think very carefully about what you say next." Evans handed over David's license and registration, his hands trembling. David stepped toward his car, pausing to deliver one final message. Remember, the badge doesn't make you better than anyone. It makes you accountable to everyone. The drive home was quiet, but David's mind raced with thoughts of change and responsibility. The incident with Evans wasn't unique. It was symptomatic of a broader issue within the department. As David sat at his desk the next morning, reviewing Evans' file, he realized the scope of the problem. Evans' behavior reflected a culture of complacency and unchecked power. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Sarah, entered with a stack of reports. "Morning, Mr. Grant. I've got the summary on last month's misconduct cases. Also, Chief Thompson wanted me to remind you about the department review next week." David nodded, taking the files. "Can you also schedule a meeting with Chief Thompson for this afternoon? There's something I need to discuss with him?" Sarah sensed the gravity in David's tone but complied without question. David turned his attention back to Evans' file, determined to address the root cause of the issue. Later that afternoon, he met with Chief Thompson, laying out his proposal for a department-wide review. "This isn't the first time Evans' name has come up," Thompson admitted, "but we've always handled it internally, quietly." "And that's the problem," David replied. "Quiet doesn't fix anything. Quiet lets it keep happening. We need to be loud." Thompson leaned forward, listening intently. "What are you proposing?" "A department-wide review of our training, protocols, and accountability systems. We can't keep sweeping this under the rug. If we don't hold ourselves to a higher standard, how can we expect the community to trust us?" Thompson nodded, recognizing the urgency of the situation. "You're going to ruffle some feathers with this." "Good," David said simply. "It's about time someone did." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. David worked tirelessly, compiling data, speaking with officers, and holding public forums to hear directly from the community. The Evans incident became a catalyst for change, forcing the department to confront its flaws head-on. Evans faced an internal hearing, with David present to oversee the proceedings. The hearing resulted in a suspension, but David knew the real victory was in preventing future incidents. Months later, David stood at the podium of a community event, addressing a room full of officers, city officials, and local residents. His words resonated with a sense of purpose and determination. Justice isn't just about catching the bad guys. It's about making sure the people sworn to protect and serve do so with integrity, fairness, and respect for everyone they encounter. The applause was thunderous, but David remained focused on the work ahead. Change wouldn't come overnight, but it would come. As he stepped down from the podium, he glanced at the faces in the crowd, some skeptical, some hopeful, but all listening. He knew this was just the beginning of a better future. David couldn't help but reflect on his own past as he drove home that evening. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, he had witnessed firsthand the impact of corruption and injustice. His father, a dedicated police officer, had instilled in him a deep sense of duty and integrity. Despite the challenges they faced, David's father had always believed in the potential for good within the system. One particular memory stood out vividly in David's mind. It was the night his father had been involved in a controversial arrest, one that had sparked outrage within the community. David had watched as his father struggled with the moral dilemma of doing what was right versus following orders. That moment had shaped David's decision to join internal affairs, determined to prevent others from facing the same dilemmas. As David arrived home, he found his wife, Maria, preparing dinner. Her warm smile greeted him as he entered the kitchen, momentarily lifting the weight of the day from his shoulders. They exchanged stories about their respective days, and David shared details of the recent developments at work. Maria listened intently, her eyes reflecting both pride and concern. "How are you handling all of this?" she asked gently. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's tough, but necessary. I can't let things continue the way they are." Maria placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "I believe in you, David. Just remember to take care of yourself, too." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics, and for a brief moment David allowed himself to relax, enjoying the comfort of family life. Yet, The weight of his responsibilities lingered at the edges of his thoughts, reminding him of the challenges ahead. The following weeks brought new challenges and unexpected obstacles. Resistance within the department was stronger than David had anticipated. Some officers viewed his reforms as unnecessary interference, while others felt threatened by the prospect of increased scrutiny. David found himself navigating a delicate balance between enforcing accountability and maintaining morale. During one particularly heated meeting, tensions boiled over as several senior officers voiced their concerns. "This is going too far," one of them exclaimed. "We're being treated like criminals." David remained calm, his voice steady as he addressed their fears. "This isn't about punishment. It's about ensuring that we uphold the highest standards. We owe it to the community to be better." Despite the pushback, David pressed on, driven by his conviction that change was essential. He spent countless hours reviewing case files, interviewing officers, and implementing new policies. The workload took a toll on him, both physically and emotionally, but he refused to give up. One evening, as David sat alone in his office, exhaustion finally catching up with him, he received an unexpected visitor. It was Officer Lisa Martinez, a young and ambitious officer who had recently joined the force. She knocked softly on the door before entering, her expression a mix of admiration and nervousness. "Mr. Grant, I just wanted to thank you for everything you're doing," she said, her voice sincere. "I joined the force because I believed in justice and fairness, but lately, I've started to doubt whether those ideals still exist here." David looked at her, seeing a reflection of his younger self in her eyes. "Don't lose faith, Lisa. Change takes time, but it's happening. Your commitment to these values is exactly what we need." Lisa smiled, visibly relieved. "Thank you. I'll keep fighting the good fight." As she left, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. The support of individuals like Lisa reminded him that his efforts were making a difference, even if progress was slow. The turning point came during a high-profile case involving allegations of police brutality. A video had surfaced online, showing an officer using excessive force during an arrest. Public outcry was swift and intense, putting immense pressure on the department to respond. David led the investigation, working closely with the district attorney's office to gather evidence and interview witnesses. The case highlighted the urgent need for reform and underscored the importance of transparency and accountability. As the investigation progressed, David uncovered a pattern of similar incidents, revealing systemic issues within the department. In a press conference, David addressed the media and the public, outlining the steps being taken to address the problem. "We acknowledge the seriousness of these allegations and are committed to holding those responsible accountable. This is a wake-up call for all of us to re-examine our practices and ensure that such incidents never happen again." The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many praising David's leadership and dedication. However, there were also detractors who accused him of undermining the department's authority. David remained steadfast, knowing that the path to change was fraught with challenges but ultimately worth it. As months passed, the department underwent significant changes. New training programs were implemented, emphasizing de-escalation techniques and cultural sensitivity. Accountability systems were strengthened, ensuring that officers were held to higher standards. Community outreach initiatives fostered greater trust and collaboration between law enforcement and residents. David continued to lead by example, inspiring others to embrace the principles of integrity and accountability. His reputation grew, earning him recognition and respect both within and outside the department. Yet he remained humble, focusing on the collective effort rather than individual accolades. One evening, as David attended a community event celebrating the progress made, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Surrounded by colleagues, friends, and community members, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The road had been difficult, but the rewards were immeasurable. Chief Thompson approached him, a genuine smile on his face. "You've done an incredible job, David. The department wouldn't be where it is today without your leadership." David nodded, grateful for the acknowledgement. It's been a team effort. We've all worked hard to make this happen." As the event concluded, David walked home, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. The badge he believed in wasn't just a symbol of authority. It was a promise of justice and fairness for all. And with each passing day, that promise grew stronger, inspiring a new generation of officers to uphold the values it represented. The journey toward reform was long and arduous, but David remained steadfast in his commitment. He continued to lead by example, inspiring others to embrace the principles of integrity and accountability. The department underwent significant changes, with new training programs and stricter oversight mechanisms put in place. As David reflected on the progress made, he felt a sense of pride and hope. The badge he believed in wasn't just a symbol of authority, it was a promise of justice and fairness for all. And with each passing day, that promise grew stronger, inspiring a new generation of officers to uphold the values it represented. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's start the conversations that matter, the ones that lead to change. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Stories that challenge us, inspire us, and remind us of what we're capable of when we stand for what's right.